Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So I like to pick the 5 most influential books in my life that deeply impacted me and give me a different, profound perspective on life. And also, I will have one honorable mention book that also impacted me. So here we go. First book, Man's Search for Meaning. Awesome book. It's about a psychiatrist named Viktor Frankl. He goes to a concentration camp. He's getting tortured by Nazis, correct? And he witnessed his family get murdered, executed. He's in Auschwitz, the most deadliest concentration camp, for 3 years. So overall, he was stayed in the concentration camps for 4 years, being tortured, nothing to live for. But what he found out through that experience is, we could overcome anything. If meaning could overcome anything in life, right? And he gave that experience meaning. So after the horrific experiences, he was able to restart his career as a psychiatrist, and he created a therapy called logotherapy, and he was able to apply meaning into other people's life, and ultimately, he gave a lot of wisdom in this book. So, a great saying he wrote in this book was, when we're not able to change a situation, we're forced to change ourselves. So, Man's Search for Meaning, great book. Second book, The Divine Comedy by Dante. It's a mythology. I was not a huge mythology fan at first, but Dante, what it teaches you, it's a psychological, you should see it as a psychological crisis book, right? It's a book that takes you through Dante's crisis. And the beginning of the book, it's poetry. So he talks about, everything's a metaphor. And, in the beginning of the book, he says he's lost, he's in the dark forest, he doesn't know where he's going, right? And then he enters hell. From hell, it's a metaphor, right? Because, we normally say, I'm going through hell. Well, Dante's going through hell. He's being refined. He is being remolded as a person. He is figuring out who he is. He is facing his inner demons. Then he goes to purgatory. Then he's rebuilding himself. Then once he gets to paradise, he becomes one. He becomes whole as a person. So you should see this book as a spiritual book. It has deeper truths to it, right? You should not just read it just for a casual read. You should take it that there's a message that he's trying to express to you, right? And no one can tell you that message. You have to read it yourself, and you have to have an intuitive feeling what the message is, right? And Dante, Divine Comedy, awesome book. Third book, I don't have the cover, but sorry about that. It's Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. Who is Phil Knight? Okay, Phil Knight is the founder of Nike. This is a memoir book of Phil Knight. And Phil Knight, he's very vulnerable through his whole life of creating Nike. He is vulnerable. He puts himself in his headspace of creating Nike, right? The book starts out with him at age 24, living with his parents. He, just finished his MBA at Stanford. Doesn't know what to do with his life like your average 24, 25-year-old. So he goes to travel around the world. Then he comes back and he pursues, at first it was called Blue Ribbon Sports, actually, before Nike. And he goes to get shoes, and he starts selling his shoes in track meets and putting himself forward, right? And eventually it becomes Blue Ribbon Sports to Nike, eventually in 1980. And the book goes all the way to when Nike goes public. And it's a book, it's very inspirational. It's about a man chasing after his dreams. He talks about chasing after your dreams and pursuing your autonomy in life, not following anyone's direction, being honest and making sure your 20s is fun and doing what you're destined to do, right? He doesn't tell you to get a job, don't get a career, but look for a calling, right? We all have a calling in life. This book, if you want a calling, read this book, Shoe Dog. Phil Knight. All right, fourth book. It's a novel. It's by Fyodor Dostoevsky, the Brothers of Karamazov. Awesome book. The way you should read this book is as a philosophical novel, purely philosophy. It talks about suffering, death, God, atheism. And what is so genius about Dostoevsky is he challenges his own belief, right? Because he was an Orthodox Christian, and he challenges his own belief, and he gives atheism a great argument why to be atheism, but also he gives a great argument to be why to believe in God, right? And he questions why children suffer. Why do we suffer? What's the redemption? What is life asking from us, right? Through suffering, through spirituality, and there's the chance for us to have redemption, to regain ourselves back, to become whole, right? And he just goes really deep into psychological depth of each character, and he gets really down to the bottom of things, of how people think, how complicated we are. And it's a long novel, but it's my favorite Fyodor Dostoevsky novel. Highly recommend reading it. My fifth, and this book is extremely powerful if you use it right. The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. See, I've been a victim of, in the past, through my adolescent years, young adult years, of people manipulating me, of taking advantage, of using, controlling me, using against me, my own emotions, right? And this book is like the Bible, right? It's a very controversial book because it's actually banned in prisons, actually. And people see this book as almost like evil. But it's because those people are judgmental and they never read the book. All right? And how you should use this book is to protect yourself, to recognize, to be aware there's people like this out in society, right? In your work, in public, right? Anyone you meet, there's a chance they're narcissists, they're toxic, they're going to use your own insecurities, your own fears against you. They're going to counterattack you. They're going to try to hurt you, right? And this book, it's a safeguard. It really is going to save you a lot of pain. I could give you, like, for example, one law. This simple law, right? Like, it's never outshine the master, right? That's the first law. And then, like, for example, never outshine the master. Like, you say your master is your boss, right? You never outshine the master. You never outshine your boss, because likely the most insecure person in the room is your boss, and they want to feel superior. They want to feel powerful. So what you do is you don't flex on your inclinations. You ask them questions. You make them feel important. You kind of, lower yourself down, make them feel superior. And by doing that, they like that. So then, that's when you get promotions. That's when they like you, right? So 48 Laws of Power. And it's, this book, I look through it each time, and, it helps you gain awareness that there's people out there that are not always good for you, and you need to recognize these patterns. And my honorable mention, it's a biography by my favorite entrepreneur. It's Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs, this book, Steve Jobs definitely had an interesting life. He was actually adopted, so he had a lot of issues growing up. He never felt wanted by the group. He was adopted by parents, so he had a lot of insecurities. He was a very complex man, right? He grew up in the counterculture in the 60s, so he was like spiritual and all zen, but at the same time he was very narcissistic, and he was very toxic as a boss, as a CEO. But it takes you through Reed College, him becoming, molding into a Steve Jobs, going to India. He was seeking spiritual enlightenment. Then he comes back, he meets his friend Steve Wozniak. They create Apple, they create the Macintosh together, right? Then eventually Steve Jobs, he gets fired from his own company in Apple in the 80s. Then he creates his own company that fails next. Then he goes to Pixar, the animation cartoon Pixar. He creates that. He helps them out. Then he goes back to Apple. He rejuvenates Apple again. He creates the iPod, iPad, right? And then unfortunately, of course, he unfortunately passed away shortly after from pancreatic cancer. But